rust. Rust is primarily because of the oxidization. So it depends on the environment, if it's being driven, how it's being driven, the miles it has. It will degrade.
How would driving it have anything to do with this at all?
Hey, he's standing. Can I ask you a question?
Just to finish this real quick, Will, let me just say that I would
sure.
recommend that you look into what a DeLorean is made out of first. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're made out of aluminum.
I have a question after you, Will.
Yeah.
Standing. So you're an adult right now, right? I'm assuming.
Correct. I could take a picture of me today as an adult. Yes, I'll document that.
I don't care about the picture. I don't care. But you're an adult today, right?
I know what you're going to ask. Yeah, I'm an adult today.
1 minute ago, were you an adult?
Yes, I was.
Okay, let's keep doing this. Let's go back 10, 15, 20 years. Okay. At what point, at what minute did you no longer become an adult?
Well, the thing is, I could document through pictures, through videos. I can see, oh, wow, over here I was a toddler. Oh, wow, over here I was a young adult.
Because if you want to talk about pictures, then we can talk about fossils, and we can talk about remains, and we can talk about DNA, and we can talk about all sorts of transitional forms.
Well, it's before he.
At what point did you no longer
count as evidence for evolution?
It's before he turned. It's before he turned 18 years old, because adult is defined.
No, 18 is just a number that was arbitrarily created. It's like
that's how the word adult.
Well,
that's what the word adult means.
It's just a legalism.
At what point did he end? At what minute was he no longer a child and he was a teen? At what minute was he
when he turned 18? The second he turned 18 years old.
All of observable human history, humans have produced humans. Go to the hospital. Go to the baby ward. Humans
are. You go back far enough.
You're going far away. Population of non-humans gave rise to a population.
If you go back far enough, you're going to see that the definition of human is different. It's just like dinosaur and birds.
Right, but if you ask us in the United States, when did he turn an adult? It's when he turned 18.
When did the United States become the United States, right? Well, that was after when the fucking British came here, there was a revolution, they declared it the United States.
Right.
What makes you think a bone found in the dirt can be evidence for evolution? Because why would we expect a bone found in the dirt to be able to do something different than an animal today?
Because of what's known as superposition.
Like add new information to the genome.
Well, it's because of superposition. It's not because of a bone in the dirt. It's superposition. And also it's also because of DNA analysis. Now, when you start digging so far and you start looking at the remains, you're going to see that you cannot get DNA out of it because they're usually fossilized. And if it's fossilized, there is no DNA left. But when you end up looking at older bones that you can extract DNA, you notice that there's certain things that simply aren't there. In other words, there was things that have been added. There's differences. But because of superposition, we can literally see it's like a time machine. The Earth is like a time machine. We can look at it and say, at this point, this thing died. It looked like this. Let's go back so many years. The same thing died, but it's so much under, and it looks a little different. And we can go a little bit further down, and we find another version that looks even different. So we can see the progression through the superposition of the things dying. That's how we know.
We can see bones found in the dirt. We can see the geologic column. Now, our interpretation based on that, you're trying to say, okay, we look at the bottom, right? We go to the Precambrian, the Cambrian, up to the Triassic.
Let me ask you something.
Whatever.
Let me ask you something.
The thing is, that's more.
Let me ask you something that's really important. If evolution is true, why should it bother you? And if it's false, then why do you want it to be false? That's a better question. Why do you want evolution to be false?
Because the empirical evidence, like genetic entropy, which nobody has debunked this entire time, proves that evolution is false.
Yeah, and like you said about the bones being found, that's fallacious. That's fallacious inductive reasoning.
No. Entropy has to do with a closed system.
We're talking about biological entropy, not the second law.
There is no biological entropy.
There is. It's the accumulation of near-neutral mutations. What's a near-neutral mutation?
Accumulation. Sometimes
what's a near-neutral mutation?
I'm sorry, say it again.
What's a neutral mutation?
A neutral mutation?
Correct. What is it?
I would say that one infers a mutation that does absolutely nothing.
It's a mutation that's neither harmful nor beneficial.
Yeah,
you're not going to see any. Yeah, you're not going to see any effect on the phenotype, but on the genotype, it has a small amount of effect,
There's
much
a lot
like
of things
rust
that
has a
happening.
small
There's a
amount
lot
of
of
effect on the car.
there's a
Over
lot of
time, those mutations accumulate.
There's a lot of things that end up happening before a cell turns into a cancer cell. And a lot of these look like they're neutral. It looks like they don't do anything. But after they accumulate over a period of time, they become cancerous cells.
And you're proving my point. On a personal level, yes, we're going to see that. On a population level, there's degeneration on the personal and the population level because they spread through the population.
Passed on. Your genes get passed on. When it comes to cancer, there's what's known as a recessive.
Too.
Well, there's what's known as a recessive gene. And there is a dominant gene and there's a recessive gene. A dominant gene is going to end up kind of overclouding something like this recessive. Now, a recessive gene, cancer is in the recessive, that gets passed on. So if I'm carrying that DNA, because my DNA has been altered, it's going to get passed on. Now, the problem is with that recessive, if the other person that I'm breeding with does not carry the same recessive gene, it's more than likely not going to be expressed within the next genetic lineage. The dominant gene is going to end up actually overpowering that. But if you end up having one parent that ends up having a recessive and another parent that has a recessive, but they also have a dominant, you can end up having a child that's a 50-50 chance of having cancer simply because of their DNA. I'm a person that on my father's side, the DNA is very strong towards cancer. He died of cancer. His sister died of cancer. His father died of cancer. His father died of cancer. Almost all of it is renal. Okay, this is a genetic thing. This is due to mutation.
My point.
This is due to mutation.
Yes, but it's passing on from generation to generation through the population. Okay, let me say, everything you're saying is proving my point. Okay,
it's not proving your
point. The data.
Are you saying? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just going to, the data shows that the overwhelming number of mutations are harmful. And you're showing this, even if only slightly harmful, I'll give you that much. And that natural selection is useless most of the time. It cannot see most of the mutations. Let me finish my sentence. I'm not letting you talk over me like last time. It cannot see most of the mutations in order to get rid of them. Far from being a viable mechanism for molecules to man evolution, Wills, mutations sound like the death deal for evolutionary theory because these near-neutral mutations pass on from generation to generation. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So you started your argument with that there are neutral mutations.
Correct.
Okay.
Would you say
that those are the majority of mutations, or would you say that that was the small amount of mutations? That's the minority is neutral.
No, the neutral mutations far outweigh the.
Is that the majority of mutations or not?
Yes.
Okay, now you just contradicted yourself because you said the majority of mutations are negative.
Yes, because it's near neutral.
Are they neutral or are they negative?
They're harmful enough, like the rust on a car. It's not it doesn't affect the fitness.
Or is it negative?
Grade slowly.
Pick one. You can't have both.
Of course you can.
No, you cannot. Something cannot both be on and off at the same time. Is the neutral the thing that is the majority of the time happening, or is it not?
Near neutral mutations far outweigh the beneficial mutations, but there's still.
No, that's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm asking.
What are you asking?
I've asked it, and I'm going to ask again. Which is more common, the neutral mutation or the negative mutation?
The near neutral.
Okay, so why did you say that the negative mutation is the most common earlier?
If I said the negative, if I said the more negative, I meant the near neutral.
It can go either direction. The neutral mutation can go either direction.
Let me
we
ask.
don't know what the outcome is going to be until it happens. So why would you end up going to the side of negativity unless that is your bias? And that is your bias, and everybody knows that's what your fucking bias is.
All population geneticists agree that we're degrading based on these near neutral mutations.
Horseshit.
I would look this up before you start arguing it, because at the end of the day, the beneficial outcomes or beneficial mutations,
it doesn't matter if it's beneficial or not. Beneficial is all subjective. You're looking at the environment and you're comparing the adaptation of the mutation to the environment, and it's a beneficial. It doesn't matter. That's something that's very subjective. Are these happening? Are the mutations happening? You've admitted that they have been.
The typographical
The only
errors are
problem that
happening.
we
And
have
we pass
now
them down
is
from
you
generation
just
to
think that they're
generation.
negative. And you think that this is what ends a life form. Sometimes
let me-
it does.
Okay,
Will, I
let
was
me,
curious. I was curious, Will, when you said your multiple family members died of cancer. Did they die young of cancer or at old natural old?
Midlife. A lot of them are midlife, 40s, 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of them. And it usually started as renal cancer.
Will,
The women died of breast cancer, and it can't, even if they fought it and they won, it would come back again. They would fight it and win. It would come back again.
I just want to ask you real quick,
Sure.
in a positive way. So, let's take a 10-year-old car, for example. Okay, we can agree that in 10 years it's probably degraded a little bit. Okay, now if I were to change the brakes, okay, does that stop the degeneration process? I understand it's helpful to the car because I just gave it new brakes or new windshield wipers, but does that stop the degradation and degeneration of the car ultimately?
The thing that you're overlooking is telomeres and telomerase.
You mean the ends of the chromosome?
Yes.
I understand they get smaller. They degenerate as well.
Every car, just like every human, can a car doesn't replicate cells. A human replicates cells, and at the end of the cell, there's telomerase.
And that makes it worse.
There's telomeres, and what happens is as it replicates and there's cell division that happens, it reduces, and eventually it can't reproduce anymore. And
why can't you just answer my question though? Does that stop the degeneration of the car? Yes or no? If I change the brake,
because let me answer it like this. It's a false analogy because cars don't have cells that self-replicate, and they also don't give birth to young cars.
actually, that makes the situation worse because the cells, the mutated cells, especially if it's in our reproductive line, we're going to pass it on. Just like you said, with cancer runs in your family, we're going to pass that on from generation to generation. It's going to accumulate in the population, the organisms, they're going to degenerate.
No, because there's something else that you're overlooking.
It's a fact.
There's something that you're overlooking, and it's called the immune system. Right, and because the immune system, a lot of times there are certain things that happen, and there's mutations. The immune system sees it and says this is not legit, and it gets rid of the cell or it gets rid of the DNA or whatever before it can actually do damage to the system. And one of the things about cancer is when it actually ends up starting to become a cancerous cell, it looks so much like the normal cell that the immune system can't attack it because it looks so much like it. And because of that, that's why the cell ends up keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And actually, cancer cells are immortal, believe it or not, because they create their own telomerase. But it's different. A car and a human being are two different things. That's almost like comparing the moon and a wristwatch. They're not the same thing.
Well, what would you say? Because I don't really think you guys are, because everything you just said is true, but still, natural selection, the immune system, they don't recognize the near neutral mutations. They're unselectable. That's the problem that you guys aren't understanding. You can't recognize the invisible rust on the car. You can't debunk it. It's irrefutable evidence. I'm sorry. I think you're agreeing with, but you're not debunking the genetic entropy.
What you're doing is you're taking bits and pieces of certain evolutionary facts, and you're coming to conclusions with it without really looking at the total picture. And I think that's what it's because you've already decided before you started that evolution is wrong, and you don't want to accept it. You don't want to see anything that might prove it correct. You just want to find any little argument you can to try to disprove it. But once again, I have to ask you, let's say for the sake of argument that evolution is false. Why does it bother you so much that people believe that?
Okay.
Well, do you mean evolution? Do you mean evolutionary theory or evolution?
Any and all of it. Why is it so important for people of faith to try to disprove evolution? And is it because if evolution is true, you have to ignore the Genesis story? And is that the reason why?
I just want to answer your last thing that you said with genetic entropy. Then we'll go on to that. This is the last thing I'm going to say because I don't think you're understanding, Wills, I don't think you're understanding that a population can be undergoing the genetic decline due to the vast numbers of slightly deleterious mutations. And this is where you're talking about, I agree. Even while selection maybe
That's not the way
beneficial
evolution works.
mutations. That's the thing.
The whole concept of evolutionary entropy sounds something that's very Christian Science. It does not sound like biology or microbiology.
What's your definition of evolution, Wills?
Change of an organism over a period of time.
Now, does that change have limits? Can you get a bacteria as big as a whale? Because we know there's animals as big as a whale, like a whale. Yes or no?
Well, first of all, a whale and bacteria are two different things.
I agree. Two different information systems?
It's not information.
At what point does a bacteria become a non-bacteria? How many generations?
Your question is nonsensical. It's like, at what point does a sky no longer become a sky?
Well, the whole point is bacteria does produce more bacteria, a variety of it. Whales produce whales and a variety of whales. You want to say that they both share a common ancestor? That's fine. In my opinion, that's a religious belief. With capital
how
B.
is it
That's
religious?
not science.
How is it religious when it's provable?
It's not.
It's not provable though. It's
certainly is.
fallacious. It's
Prove-
inductive
prove
reasoning.
bacteria and whales share a common ancestor.
Let me tell you something that's provable.